Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Improved Podcast, the official podcast of Classic Studios. I am your host, Chase Collins, and it is so lovely to have you with us here this Monday morning. For those of you who are new here, I use this podcast as sort of an accountability tool for myself in order to keep myself honest with all of my goals and projects that I'm working on week to week, and I get to come in here and share all the things that I've been working on, and hopefully those listening can use this podcast as an accountability tool for themselves as well and keep themselves honest with any goals or projects that they're working on. And these goals range and projects range from creative writing screenplays, producing films, making music, releasing albums, all that good stuff. And so I am so happy to have this little platform to just share what's I've been working on. And this week I have a great episode for you all, kind of discussing the steps I had to take in order to purchase my second home. So for those of you who didn't catch my episode last week, I was able to purchase a home in October 2023, and I am now a landlord, living in my new house and renting out my old place. And this episode sort of talks about all of the goodness, all of the nitty-gritty details on how I was able to specifically secure the down payment for the house. Next week we have more episodes that go into moving and finding the correct tenants and all of that good stuff. But if that interests you, definitely listen to this episode and stick around for next week. All right, I will talk to you all later.
Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the stuff I had to do in order to secure the down payment for my first property. Now, I went about this in a little bit of a unique way. I'm not saying it's the correct way, but I'm saying this is what I did, and hopefully it's worked out. Of course, I'm recording this before I've actually closed on the house, but I wanted to record this episode while all the information was still relatively fresh in my mind, and so that I don't miss anything. And it's kind of just a fun thing to talk about because I think it's pretty clever what I was able to do. So let me first give you all a little bit of backstory. I've been on the hunt for a new house for a good while now, about 6 months or so. I've been wanting to purchase a home. Of course, there's a lot of homework involved in that. You can't just say, okay, let me buy this house. I was doing a ton of research regarding locations, the type of property, etc. Specifically, I was looking at houses that were either closer to the coast. That's sort of where my first initial search began, was looking for houses near the coast. But then that didn't really work out because everything near the coast is just a bit more expensive because, waterfront properties and everything, or even within a couple blocks of the water, you're still dealing with outrageous properties for a single family home. And I didn't really want to go about doing that. And then the idea came up of buying maybe a duplex or something like that so that I can buy that property and turn it into, or do a little bit of house hacking, I guess is what it's called, where you live in one half of the duplex and then rent out the other half. So that was an idea for a while, but that didn't work out because duplexes are just very expensive right now. So I kind of reverted back to my original plan of buying another townhouse. So the house I currently live in is a townhouse, and my plan has always been to buy a townhouse, move into it, live in it for 2 years, save up money, and then buy a new townhouse and move into that one, rent out the old townhouse, live in the new one for 2 years, save up enough money for a new one, then buy another one, and so on and so forth for 10 years until I have 5 rental properties that are all earning a bit of money. So that's been my plan for forever. But then, of course, I got distracted with all these different ideas of maybe I'll buy a single family by the coast. Maybe I'll buy another duplex. Maybe I'll buy a duplex. Maybe I'll buy, this, that, and the other thing. And sort of came to realize that, no, the housing market is just too crazy in Florida, too crazy all around the U.S. for me to kind of deviate from my plan. So I decided to stick with just buying another townhouse. So that's what I sort of settle on, of course, whether you're buying a single family home or a duplex or a townhouse, everything's expensive, especially in Florida. So I was trying to find a property that fit my standards and was also a good investment for the future, because I want it to become a rental property in a couple of years or so. And so I wasn't really able to find anything like townhouses nowadays. Like if I wanted to buy the exact same townhouse that I live in right now, it'd be like $200,000 more than what I paid for the house I currently live in. So that's just, unrealistic. So I reached out I've just did a bunch of research on like what to do and where these houses, and I toured several properties, even made offers on several properties as well, and they just didn't work out because they were asking too much and I couldn't afford what they were asking. Plus there's HOA fees in Florida that are kind of high. Of course there's locations without HOA fees, but all the properties that I were interested in had high HOA fees. So that immediately priced me out of the market on several properties that I really liked. Eventually I started talking to one of my coworkers at my actual job, and he threw out the idea of a new construction home, and that was intriguing to me. I had never thought about a new construction home, just because I assumed they were way too expensive, or like, why would I even do that? This is just my second house. I don't need a new construction, and I'm not going to be custom building a home or anything like that. But when he pitched it to me, he said like, no, yeah, it's actually a good idea because it's a new home. So it might be a little bit more expensive, but typically you can get a lower interest rate when you work directly with the construction company or the builder, whoever's building the property. I was like, I never knew that. I never knew the interest rate would be lower. So he pitched it as like, if the interest rate is lower, and the house is more expensive, you can still make that work, because overall your monthly payment will be lower because your interest rate is so much lower. So you can get like more bang for your buck almost. And so as soon as he told that to me and I learned about this, it sort of clicked in my head like, yeah, that's totally the way to do this. That makes sense. So I took his idea and I just ran with it, and I started looking up new constructions nearby, and I found a couple of places that are being built in my area. And so I toured a couple of different properties, and then I found one that's 15 minutes away from my current house, and it is sick. It was great. Like, I toured one of the model homes. Of course, it's a new construction, so my actual property that I'm gonna buy is being built right now as I'm recording this. Hopefully I'm moved in by the time you're listening to this, but it was awesome. Like, it was it's bigger than this house, but it has a half bath that my house would have a full bath. So my current house is a townhouse, 3-bed, 3-bath, about 1,400 square feet, maybe 1,450. And then this new property is a 3-bed, 2.5-bath with about 1,600 square feet and a 2-car garage. So that's sort of where the allure came from, was this 2-car garage. So that's why I ended up going with it. Of course, it's a bigger house, but doesn't have that extra full bath. So that's like a little concerning in terms of like future rentals. But the way the layout works, it's really nice. It's almost like the house has its own, private suite type of thing. So, or 2 master suites. Not exactly that, but it's similar. So it was a good deal. I was happy with the layout of the property, and it wasn't too dissuaded by only having a 3-bed, 2-bath as opposed to a 3-bed, 3-bath. So essentially I signed the contract or the agreement within a couple of days of saying I want the house. And here's where the story like really begins, what I wanted to focus on today. So that's all the backstory. Here's where the story begins. Once I signed the agreement, I was ready to put down my escrow payment. And typically if you go into escrow on a property, it's like $3,000, maybe high as $5,000, but usually it's like between $2,000 to $5,000 that you put in escrow, and then you have 30 days closing, and then you complete the rest of the closing costs and the rest of your down payment. That's only been my experience, and that's what I was expecting. And then when I signed the agreement, it says, oh no, you owe the full down payment within 48 hours of signing this agreement. I was like, whoa, that's, way more money than I was anticipating on like giving at that exact moment, because, and I'll get into this, I'm doing a unique way of financing my down payment. And so as soon as I found that, I knew I had to act quickly. So this is what I had to do. For financing my down payment, I am using a 401k loan. So of course I had my own personal savings, which was that $5,000 for what I anticipated putting towards the escrow deposit, and then I would execute my 401k loan and use the rest of that money for the closing costs. However, they required the money within 48 hours of signing that initial agreement, and so I had to act fast to get that 401k loan money, the cash from my 401k, into my bank account. So before I get into too many details, I want to first discuss like a 401k loan and why I decided to go with that as opposed to like a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance. So for those of you who don't know, a home equity line of credit is essentially, not exactly, but essentially taking out a second mortgage on your property. And so how it would work is you would apply, depending on how much equity you have in your house, you can take up to like 80% of that, or maybe 70% of that as a line of credit that you can then use to pay off, either other debts, or you can pay off, use a large lump sum for like a down payment or for renovation on your house to, improve the, if you wanted to redo the bathrooms or the kitchen, you can use that money to increase the value of your property and then hopefully see a return on investment. I was not interested in doing a home equity line of credit because, the housing market is just so crazy right now. It seems like more of a risk to take out a line of credit on your current home, especially if you're trying to max that out like I was, up to that 70-80%, and then turn it into and then if the housing market goes down, suddenly I'm upside down on my mortgage, and even if I sell the house, I still wouldn't be able to cover all the debt, so I would still have to be paying off this home equity line of credit on a house I no longer own. It's just like not what I'm interested in doing at this exact moment. I still might do that in the future, but it might be for like a third or fourth house type of a thing. So in a couple of years, maybe I might do that. We'll see. Now, a cash out refinance was my other option, where I would essentially just be refinancing the mortgage and then taking that cash out, and then I would have to do the max I could take out would be 80%, because it would be you have to leave in 20% of the equity in the home so that you won't have to pay PMI. It's more complicated than that, but that's essentially what it is. So I could do a cash out refinance and take out the money, refinance the loan, but that's just a silly thing to do right now because I purchased my house in the winter of 2021 where interest rates were in the twos, literally 2% interest rate. And so refinancing, I would be taking out a bigger loan at a higher interest rate and restarting my my payback period, which would just end up costing me like, hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest over the, life of the loan, which is just a bad financial decision. So did not want to do a cash out refinance or a refinance at all. So that's what I settled on, the 401k loan. So for those of you who are aware, a 401k loan is essentially taking out a loan against what you've invested into your 401k. So if you work for a company, they have a 401k set up for you, and you're making payments to that, contributions, which I've been doing since I first got into the workforce, so since I was like 22, and it over the course of the last, how old am I, 27, so 5 years, I've been able to build that up to a sizable chunk, especially with taking advantage of the employee match programs and everything like that. I have like a sizable chunk of change in there that I can use. Of course, let me explain, like, typically, right, they say don't borrow money for yourself, especially if you're saving that money for retirement. But I'm not really counting on my 401k for retirement, right? I plan on being like super wealthy, whether it's through selling scripts or doing this landlord investment thing or, property management, whatever it ends up being. I plan on being a wealthy individual. So counting on my 401k for my retirement is just not something I'm interested in, not something I want to do. Of course, I'm not going to be irresponsible and not contribute to my 401k. I'm still going to do that, but it's just not something I want to count on, especially because that money is subject to the stock market's behavior. If the stock market goes up, your money goes up. If the stock market crashes, your money crashes. And so I would rather use that money that is mine and use it and invest it into a physical property that I know that I own and I have the equity in, prior to investing that money in the stock market, because I just it makes me a little bit more uneasy. I think the stock market is a little bit more flexible or variable than say investing in properties. Of course, that's just my take on things. I could be totally wrong. There's plenty of people who make tons of money on the stock market. They're probably way smarter than me, but this is what I'm choosing to do. So that is what I decided to do. That's the reason why I decided to take out this 401k loan and use it as a down payment for my second property, and so that I can turn my first home into an investment property or an income generating rental. Now, a quick deep dive into 401k loans, right? Typically, 401k loans, it's a loan, right? So you'll have to pay that back, and you'll have to pay that back at a variable interest rate. So typically, variable interest rates are bad because they fluctuate with the market. So it could go up, it could go down. Your monthly payment is going to reflect that. So if you're, let's say like you take out this loan and your monthly payment is like $200 a month. If the interest rate, because it's variable, goes up the next month from like 6% up to 15%, your monthly payment is going to go up from $200 to $250 or $300. I'm just throwing out numbers right now. None of that's real math. That's just, off the top of my head, like making up stuff. But in principle, that's what you're going to have to be dealing with month to month. Now, I think mine is like 9% variable interest rate right now, right? But it can change. And so going up to 11%, it could go up as high as 11%. But I don't really care if this interest rate grows up or goes down, because how a 401k loan payback is set up, or at least how mine is set up, that interest is going back into my 401k account. So it's not going towards a bank. It's not a fee for the bank to collect on the money that they insure or that they've lent you. That money, the money I pay in interest, is going right back into my 401k account. So whether I end up paying like an extra $20,000 or an extra $15,000 in interest over the course of, X amount of years, that extra money is just going back to my account. It's a loan. It's a personal loan, essentially. So it's advantageous to me to leverage that money in this way, so that it's really a wash, right? Like I'm just leveraging this, lump sum of money now and investing it into a property, and then paying myself back with interest. And then in X amount of years, once the loan is paid off, I'll have all of that money back into my 401k account plus the interest, and it'll be like none of it ever happened. So it's just like a great deal, as in my mind, as opposed to taking out like, maxing out several credit cards, not being able to pay them back, and then using that money for a down payment. Like this is a way more, to me, it feels like way more of a guarantee that this will be successful. And if it's not, then like, well, I just, screwed myself over. There's nobody else at fault, and there's nobody else going to be coming knocking at my door for the money that I, owe them or whatever. Now, I do want to dive into a little bit of the nuances of that 401k loan again. So there's layers to this, right? We're on like layer 3 about 401k loans. But I wanted to keep my monthly payment as low as possible, so I took out that 401k loan for 60 months, which is 5 years. So that's, a long time, especially for a loan with interest. You're suddenly, paying, if like, let's think of this like if it was a car payment, right? If I bought a $30,000 car on a 5-year loan at, like, I don't know what interest rates are for cars, but, like, let's say it's 8%, you're going to be paying back several hundred, not hundreds, but, at least $10,000 in interest over the course of that 5-year loan. But if you were to do like a 3-year loan, you would only be paying back like maybe $3,000 in interest. And so that's why it's advantageous to have a shorter loan period, but then your monthly payment is going to be higher because you're paying back the same amount of money over the shorter period of time. So your money, the monthly payment will go up. Now, I don't care about how much interest I pay over the next 5 years, because all of that money I pay in interest is going right back into my 401k account. So that, like, caveat of like, oh, be careful, if you pay 5 years of interest, you're going to be paying $7,000. It's like, yeah, but I don't care about that interest because it's going back into my pocket. Now, if I was paying some schmuck, some creditor or some bank, $7,000, $20,000, $10,000 in interest, I would be really upset about that, and I would be working hard to pay that debt off much earlier. That's why they say you should make an extra monthly payment every year towards your mortgage so that you pay it off your home property, 7 years earlier or whatever. So it's like the same principle, but for me it's in reverse, because I don't care that interest, that I'm paying interest, because all the interest money is going right back into my account. And just so you are aware, the reason why companies set up that 401k loan in such a way with a variable interest rate, it's so that you can, whatever gains you will have had from the stock market with that money otherwise being invested, the money you took out for the down payment, or the money I took out for the down payment, whatever gains I would have had, that's the 9% interest rate is supposed to account for that, essentially. Now, of course, it's not a 1-to-1, because I don't think the stock market returns 9% year over year, but I could be wrong on that. This is just my guess. I think at least mine hasn't. Whatever, I don't know. Maybe I make bad investments, but that's why I'm investing in properties. Anyways, another quick note about why I did a 5-year loan, 60 months, is because I am, right now, my goal was to buy a new house every 2 years. So buy a home, save up for 2 years, buy a new home, save up enough money for a down payment, buy a new home, and rinse and repeat every 2 years. Right now, it's been 2.5 years since I purchased my last home. So if that track record continues, I'm at a 2.5 year clip of saving up money, buying a home, saving up money, buying a home. And if you guys are, math whizzes like me, 2.5 years times 2 is 5 years. So in theory, I should be able to save up enough money for a down payment for 2 more houses while I'm paying back this 5-year 401k loan. And then by the time the repayback period is over, I can take out another 401k loan and do the whole thing again and just take out a bigger loan, because I'll have more money in there. So then, in 5 years' time, I can take out another 401k loan with the additional money I've invested into my 401k and turn that into another down payment for another new property, assuming I'm still working for the same company and all the rules have still apply and everything like that. So there you go. That is all the background information on a 401k loan and why I decided to do that, and not like a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance or anything like that. Now, if we go back to the way this conversation started, I needed to get that money out of my 401k into my checking account so that I could wire it to my lending company, essentially, or to the closing company, whatever the people are. The people who are selling me this house, the builders, I guess, or the contractors, within 48 hours of signing that initial loan agreement. So when I signed it, I hadn't taken the money out of my 401k account, and I needed there's a whole process in order to take out a 401k loan. Like for me, it was actually pretty simple, but it could have been way more complicated. So let me explain. With the company that my 401k is handled through, which is whatever the company is, I won't dox them or dox myself. But they have two different options. They have one, a 401k loan for a general loan, and then I have a 401k loan for a home property purchase. And the benefit of doing a 401k loan as a home property purchase as opposed to just a general loan is that the payback period starts 45 days or maybe even 50 days after you take out that initial loan, so that you have more time to sort of make that purchase. However, in order to do a home property purchase 401k loan, you need to provide documentation signed by both parties to prove that you were using the money to buy a house so that you could qualify for this loan. However, I couldn't get the signed agreement by both parties until I give them the down payment and I put it in the escrow account. Do you see the problem? It's like a chicken and the egg situation where like, oh, I can't do one without the other, but I can't do either without both. It's just like a whole mess. So I opted to go with the 401k general loan, which is, more generic. It gives you a little bit more flexibility with what you want to do with those funds. However, the payback period starts sooner. So within like 2 pay periods, I'm already starting to pay back that 401k loan for that 5 years. So the time already starts, like it starts immediately essentially, which is annoying, but it's not, a deal breaker, and it's not the end of the world that happened. It was just something I wasn't anticipating, but I had to do on the fly because I only had, 48 hours to get this stuff figured out. Now, here's the kicker. This is maybe the last thing to talk about when it comes to 401k loans. Your 401k, right, is money invested in the stock market. So it fluctuates based on the market itself. So if I withdraw the maximum amount of money I was able to, which is what I wanted to do, and the market closed under what it opened at, then to use a colloquialism, my check would bounce essentially, right? Because I'm withdrawing 50% of the money in my 401k account when it opened high, and that so the 50% was based on what the market opened at. And if the market closed down or in the red, I think that's what the stock market bros use, maybe black, I don't know. I would have been essentially like taking out 52% or 53%, which I'm not allowed to do. So that I had to essentially wait and cross my fingers that the market opened high, or opened where it opened and then closed high, so that I could withdraw the maximum amount of money. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that was kind of complicated and I used some weird analogies there, but overall, it did exactly that. Thank the Lord. It closed high. I was able to withdraw 50% of the money, which probably ended up being around like maybe 49.8% or something like that. But yeah, so if you're keeping track, right, I now owe 5%. I now owe my entire down payment to the building company within 48 hours of signing the contract. But the money from the 401k loan won't hit my account until 72 hours after I execute the 401k loan. Do you see that problem? 48 hours and 72 hours are not the same amount of hours. So I had to beg and plead for the company to take it on good faith that the money would be wired to them within 72 hours, not 48 hours, and they were none too pleased, to say the least. But they said, hey, we'll just charge you, give us like 2.5K for this next 48 hours, and then wire us the money and we'll be square. So that's essentially what I did. I had to give them like a $2,500 of good faith money, which is essentially what I wanted to do for the escrow account, whatever. And then I had to wire them the remaining bit of the down payment, which I ended up doing a 5% down payment on the loan. And that is how it worked. So yeah, that's the story of how I secured the funding for my down payment for this property. now I'm sort of in the middle of moving house. These last few months have been, a lot of signing documents, reviewing my financing, double checking my math, trying to get my house rented, all of that stuff that comes with, buying a home and renting out your old house. I'm in the middle of it, but I will have more updates for you all later. Likely next episode, you'll get to dive into what I had to do to rent my property, the next steps for me. Because I haven't closed at the time of recording this. I still need to, get new homeowners insurance. I need to switch to landlord's insurance. I need to get a bunch of stuff done, but you all will hear about that on the next episode of the Improve Podcast. Thank you so much for letting me discuss all of this with you. It's very interesting for me. I hope you all, found value in it, and maybe it gives you some creative ideas of how to, use your money in unique ways to be more advantageous to you, because it's your retirement plan. It's your life. You can figure this stuff out in ways that maybe aren't as explicitly clear, but all of it's entirely possible. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will talk to you all later. And obviously, none of this is financial advice. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just hoping that this will all work out. Don't do what I did, because who knows? I could be dead broke in 2 years. Hopefully not, but we'll see. Find out next time. All right. Peace out.